Succession planning isn't just about passing the torch. It's about ensuring long-term success for business owners and their teams. Today, I'm joined by Gary O'Hearn of 2020 Management. He is also an ISPA member and a certified succession planner. In this conversation, he's going to share how he used ISPA's tools to help one business owner successfully shift from an active role to an absentee owner. Gary, thanks for being here. Let's get started. Can you share a brief overview of your client while keeping industry and location details confidential where necessary? What was the initial need that started the conversation between you and the client?
The business is a 12-year-old business. The owner has some proprietary product that he has manufactured, then he has it delivered to himself, and then he subsequently takes orders through e-commerce to ship that product out the door. He sells about 90% of his product that way. He has a small organization, it's 5 employees, and I was on board to help him develop processes for the business, procedures for the business, put a strategic plan together, and identify and help him achieve his goals.
It sounds like this introduction happened through networking, which really speaks to the power of connecting in our industry. Since the owner was looking for someone with experience running a similar sized business, how did you frame your approach to establish credibility and build trust right from the start?
The owner was actually introduced to me as someone who could help him out as a result of going through a networking event. One of my friends introduced me to the owner, and we chatted a little bit, and what he was looking for somebody who would run a business similar to size to his that could help him go through and navigate and deal with some of the challenges that he was having.
You mentioned that he had a clear vision. He wanted to step away from daily operations and become an absentee owner within 2 years. But with no management team, no defined processes, and a business heavily reliant on him, that's a huge gap to fill. As you started assessing the situation, what major obstacles stood out to you?
He had identified that in 2 years he wanted to become an absentee owner. He wanted to leave the business here and let it continue to operate, but he wanted to relocate to a different state. With that, he had no management team in place. He had no processes, no procedures. He had a nice client base, good revenue, but he needed to develop a plan so that he could vacate the premises and be an absentee owner.
It sounds like you took a very consultative approach. First defining the current state of the business, and then helping him envision the future state. How did you use that to guide the conversation and get him on board with taking action?
Well, it was kind of a unique situation in that prospect was brought to me, and the approach that I used was to talk about the current state and get a detailed analysis of the current state of the business, and then ask him to define what he thought would be the future state if this was converted the way that he wanted it and it was positioned so that he could operate as an absentee owner. With that, we were able to come up with a rationale and a reason for using the CPA as the tool to help us identify the gap in the bridge between current state and future state.
Since he had a goal, but no clear path to get there, I imagine the SPA played a big role in clarifying priorities. What did you learn through the assessment that helped shape the plan? And how did you work through that process to help strengthen your relationship with the client?
He has a goal. He had no clue how to attain that goal. And so the SPA was critical in identifying those areas where there were weaknesses in his. So the SPA as a succession planning tool is very valuable. When I use it as a transitioning tool, transitioning from active owner to absentee owner, really the categories dealing with family and family dynamics, family governance aren't really as appropriate as they would be in a succession planning. But certainly all the other areas were very, very valuable with respect to teamwork and strategic management and strategic plan and a successor. Those were all very appropriate. And so the owner and I concentrated on those 8 sections. Once we saw the results of the family activity, there was really no reason to pursue any activity in those categories.
Once you identified the key focus areas, how did you go about structuring an action plan? What were some of the first steps you took to make sure the business was moving in the right direction?
Again, I think the fact that I used it for a transition plan was critical in that we were able to, in those 8 categories that we did decide to look at and looked at closely, we were able to come up with a list of 3 or 4 items in each category that needed to be prioritized. We then made an action item report and a spreadsheet and a schedule to go after those items that needed improvement.
It sounds like there already have been some big milestones, like hiring a VP of sales and a warehouse manager. Those are huge steps in establishing a leadership team that can keep the business running without the owner's day-to-day involvement. What other progress have you seen, and what impact has that had on the business?
We're executing the plan, which is the biggest part of the activity. As evidence of that, one of the biggest wins is that we extended an offer to a former employee of mine to be the vice president of sales and marketing, and he's accepted and will start in about 2 weeks. And we decided that we needed a warehouse manager to manage the distribution part of the business and the operations part of the business. And that individual was interviewed yesterday, accepted, and will start on Monday. So those are the 2 biggest wins immediately. And this is all within the first 30 days of having digested the results of the SPA, put a plan together, and then started executing the plan. And those were the first 2 top priorities that we had, was to hire those 2 people.
With key hires in place, what's next in ensuring the owner can fully step away? Are there specific processes, reporting structures, or leadership development initiatives that you're putting in place to support the transition?
Well, those 2 hires will be the pillars and be his go-to people to run the business in his absence. That's the most significant part of it at this point.
I know you mentioned that the SPA uncovered things that aren't usually addressed in traditional assessments. What aspects of the process have been the most impactful in shaping the client's ability to step into that absentee role successfully?
And the best tool to assess a situation in a business and help develop a plan for improvement. It's a lot of items that aren't normally talked about in assessments like this. Putting the final formal plan together, a strategic plan for the business, is probably 4 to 6 months away. But it gives us all of the data that we need at this point to implement improvements to help him meet his goal in a timely manner.
You've taken an approach that's a bit different from, say, wealth advisors or attorneys who already have a large book of business owners. You've been able to introduce succession planning by focusing on identifying the gap between where a business is now and where the owner wants to be. What advice would you give to advisors who want to take a similar approach and integrate succession planning into their practice?
As it relates to my situation, and my situation's a little bit unique. I'm a business consultant. I don't have a lot of clients that I can go and take my business to or succession planning to, such as wealth advisors might have or lawyers might have. So I have a little different approach, and I think the approach is that this tool, I can sell the succession planning tool once I've convinced an owner there's a current state and there's a future state and there's a gap that needs to be filled, and the assessment is the tool to use the gap. So it's a little bit of a reverse psychology, not selling the tool itself, but selling the service and then using the tool as the way to get the results that we need.
It sounds like this experience has opened up new opportunities for you, especially in helping business owners who have built something successful and now want to step back. Where do you see your practice going from here? And how do you plan to continue using the ISPA resources to support that growth?
Well, currently my business is built on helping people and helping businesses be successful. I think that there is from this experience, I think there's an untapped or unsatisfied need of business owners who are maybe $10 million and less, probably $5 million and less in revenue, who maybe started out in their particular skill set with sales or engineering or whatever the case was, but then became entrepreneurs and started their own business. They've now worked hard after 5 or 6 years to get the business to a level that's generating the kind of revenues that are sustaining a workforce. And they really want to get out of being an entrepreneur. They want to go back to what their core competence was. And I think there's a great opportunity here to be able to present the current state, future state, and the future state is I want to go back to my original job and still be the owner of the business, and utilize the SPA for facilitating, identifying the gap in that situation.
Gary, thank you for sharing your insights and experience with us. Your work in helping business owners transition and build sustainable futures truly showcases the power of strategic succession planning. And for those of you watching, if you found this conversation valuable, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more insights on succession planning and business advisory. And if you're ready to take your practice to the next level, check out ISPA and all the resources available to help you succeed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.